That said, there are supercharger kits and turbo kits where you can make...
DP, come back to reality here. DP,
Oh man. And now the moment that all of you have been waiting for, the price tag, something that most car enthusiasts don't want to do, DP. You guys have asked, and we are listening. You want to know how much it's cost for us to build our K-Swap NC Miata. So Pete just did the numbers on it, and he's handing me a piece of paper right now with the total build cost. And
DP, come back to reality here. DP,
oh man, I looked at that number and wow, I was not expecting that. But before we show you the number, why don't we give you a quick walk around of the car and explain to you what we've built here. If you guys have been following along with this build, then you'll know this is a 2007 NC Miata that we bought from Go Moto out of Louisiana. This was a crash car that they repainted for us in this very nice dark horse blue. It was a very cheap car to buy at auction, less cheap by the time we painted it and shipped it up here. The goal all along with this project was to K-swap it because we wanted to make this car properly fast and properly fun, and we felt this was the right way to do it. So we teamed up with the guys from K-Power Industries who've just released this K-swap kit for the NC. And as you would have seen in that initial video, we got this thing done in 2 days, which is pretty remarkable. And as you would have seen in the other build videos, we also did a whole host of performance mods to the suspension, brakes, wheels, and tires, including these very nice Wed Sports SA72Rs, wrapped in, of course, Continental's Extreme Contact Force track tire. Inside, we've done a whole bunch of upgrades as well, including a GC Fabrications roll bar, these Buddy Club version 2 bucket seats, and a Momo Monte Carlo steering wheel. So with the build quickly summarized, it's time to talk about why we opted for a K-swap over the other options that were available to us, which would have included, of course, like supercharging or turbocharging the 2-liter motor, swapping in the very popular 2.5-liter motor out of a Mazda 3 or Ford Fusion, or, V8 swapping it. There's a lot of options for this chassis, so why did we go K? The 2-liter motor is really not a bad starting point if you want to go have fun in a Miata, but it certainly has its power limitations. That said, there are supercharger kits and turbo kits where you can make 250 wheel horsepower out of one of these. How reliably though, I don't know for sure. And for us, it wasn't really a consideration because we know from decades of experience that putting forced induction into a car like this with a small engine bay like this is going to cause a lot of heat management issues. And we wanted a car that was going to be very simple, very reliable, and not have to worry about, oh my God, are we going to overheat this in one lap or not? So that is part of the reason why we opted for the K24, which is a very well-proven platform, a platform we know extremely well and can make really good power naturally aspirated. So that was really the key driving force behind the reason for going K24. The 2.5 swap, which a lot of you have asked about in the comment section on Instagram and on YouTube, is really not a bad option. It's basically a long stroke version of this engine, and it doesn't rev the way a K24 does, and it certainly doesn't make the power a K24 does stock versus stock. Those make around 170 wheel, where this, as you guys saw, made 218 in our car, where the 2-liter makes like 140 wheel horsepower. So you can make those 2.5s pretty potent, but you got to throw a bunch more money at it, and then you're getting into built motors, which is expensive and adds that whole element of loss of reliability, where we love the K24 sealed engine, Honda reliability, just runs all day long, revs to 8K. The 2.5 really doesn't offer any of that. So even though the upfront cost of going to the K is more, in our opinion, to get K levels of performance out of the 2.5, you're getting into a pretty expensive and I think less reliable solution. On the reliability front with that 2.5 motor, there's a well-known racer in Grid Life Touring Cup named Luke McGrew who ran an NC Miata with a 2.5 in it for 2 and a bit seasons before he gave up on it. And in talking to James Houghton, who's also a competitor in that series and is really good friends with Luke, talked a lot about that program. James told me that that motor really had issues with the crank. It's a cast crank in that motor, and apparently once he swapped to a Mazda Speed 3 forged crank, all of the reliability issues went away. I don't know the details on it, but I do know that he blew up at least one motor because there's a video on his YouTube channel of him losing a motor in testing. But he did have good reliability once he went to that forged crank, and I assume probably different internals as well, which proves the point that those motors stock are not really built for a motorsports environment. They only rev to 6,500 RPM, and you have to delete the balance shafts as part of this swap. By the way, at the end of this video, when we give you all the numbers, the full breakdown of our build costs, we'll also give you the numbers on what a 2.5 build would have cost, what turbocharging a 2-liter would have cost, and we'll even look at what, say, a V8 swap would have cost, because obviously a V8 swap is also an option in this car. And again, for us, it just wasn't the right solution because I've driven some V8 swap Miatas, and to me, it just felt like it overpowered the chassis, where I felt like the K series is just like the right torque level, the right power level for this chassis to be really fun and really to use all the performance it has to offer. Part of the other reason we feel K is the way these motors deliver their power is really very special. Like I mentioned earlier, you can rev them to 8K. Even these K24s are very reliable up to, say, like 8,200 RPM without touching anything, even leaving that balance shaft, oil pump assembly in there. And the sky's really the limit with these motors in terms of what you can do to them, because the aftermarket support is absolutely massive. So, we can just start off by throwing a set of cams in here and get this thing up to like 240, 250 at the wheel with relative ease. And obviously, if you want to throw a forced induction on it, these motors are very well proven to be totally reliable to 400, 450 wheel horsepower. And that's simply not the case with the other engines that we've mentioned earlier, at least not the 4-cylinder versions. And having tried the 2-liter and 2.5 engines in the past, I can tell you those motors just do not feel as smooth, as powerful, as responsive as a K24 does. So even though the 2.5 can make comparable power in modified form, it still doesn't have the feel of a K series. It doesn't feel smooth, and it just feels more agricultural. It won't rev the way these motors do. It's just not as good a starting point. So if you're building, your dream track car, or even a fairly affordable one, we'll get to that in a minute, I think K is just such a solid choice. Another question we've got a lot is, why not just build an S2000, since it comes with a very high output Honda engine already and has a great chassis, as we already proved with our badass 2000 build way back in the day. And that build was awesome because that was a $4,500 S2000. We called it the cheapest S2000 in the world back in 2014, 10 years ago when we started to build that car. However, S2000 prices, as you guys will know, have gone through the roof. And now to get a decent one, you're talking like 25 to 50 grand at the high end. Don't even ask me how much a CR is going for these days. But the point is, S2000s have become fairly valuable, so not necessarily the right place to start if you want a track car that you can go put in a wall accidentally and not bankrupt yourself with. So the big draw for us with the NC is it's a great chassis with amazing suspension design, and it's relatively cheap. Like, this car was bought at auction for $3,500. We'll tell you the total price on it coming up shortly, but you can get these for like $4,000 to $8,000 for, rough ones that are kind of perfect for a track build. So I think it's a very appealing, affordable track car chassis right now. And to me, the S2000 has kind of priced itself out of that area.
And now the moment that all of you have been waiting for, the price tag, something that most car enthusiasts don't want to do, DP, is add up the costs, because wow, everybody, this one was a doozy. I will let DP give you guys the total. It is,
I did black out there for a minute, but it is $39,333 US, which is a pretty staggering number for what we initially envisioned as an affordable track car.
Affordable track car, yes,
and,
yes.
We'll explain to you how the numbers ballooned to this point.
Yes, I mean, the car itself, it was $9,500 after paint, NC3 conversion, all that stuff. So it was still, I think, a really good bargain in that sense.
It was.
But right there, we're almost 10 grand deep. The K-Power Industries K-Swap Miata kit is another $12,000. That's with everything,
including the Haltech stuff, the exhaust system, the intake,
AC,
intake to exhaust tip, running, driving,
everything. So and some of you look at that and say that is expensive, but at the same time, like, it's such a well thought out kit. And really, again, for us, it was like the reliability factor of having an engine set up in there that's going to be reliable at all times on the track, to us is worth it, right?
And enjoyable too. And frankly, that engine in this chassis just speaks to our souls.
Yeah.
And that's important. A V8 swap is expensive too, probably more than this. But if it speaks to your soul because you're a V8 guy, then it makes sense. So it's not just about the numbers, is it?
Yeah.
You also have to do something that you're enthusiastic about and are going to enjoy.
100%. So. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't build this car for less money, because we actually spent $16,000 in addition to all the parts that we installed. And that's suspension, brakes, wheels and tires, like radiator, interior, so everything together, hardtop, all this stuff. When you add up all these other parts, you can see the price gets way, way bigger in a very, very fast manner. I would actually estimate you could build this car, if you had an NC already, for around like $15,000, and that would include wheels and tires, brakes, just the bare basic stuff to go and, enjoy yourself on the racetrack.
Yeah,
right?
You could K-swap one of these for significantly less money than we spent by using a lesser electronics package too, or like using a cheaper exhaust system.
Yeah.
There's ways you could cut costs, in other words. We didn't do that because we we're building a track car where we really wanted to put the best that we could put on it, and we're in the fortunate position to be able to do that.
As for cost of the other options like a turbocharger or a supercharger, you're looking at like at least $6,000 to get into one of those on that 2-liter motor.
And for you V8 guys out there, I'm sure you've already been on V8 Roadster's website, and their NC kit starts at a little over $10,000, and that does not include the price of an LS, which are not inexpensive engines anymore. Yeah, you can get like the iron block truck motor, still pretty cheap, but if you want a aluminum block LS based engine, which is really what you want, you don't want to put an iron block at the front of a Miata, you're looking at pretty big bucks compared to a K, which is, what do we pay, $1,300 for ours?
Yeah, Canadian. So you're like, that's the beauty of the K24. It's $1,000 engine, so if you blow it up, you know, swapping a fresh one doesn't break the bank like an LS would, right?
And there's no supply limitation issues, at least not yet. I mean, Honda made millions of these K motors, I think they're going to stay cheap for quite a long time.
And I do want to make a quick point, like, yes, the cost of things certainly is a factor, but it's also time. Like when we go to a racetrack and we grenade a motor, we've lost that entire racetrack. If you talk to anybody that actually races competitively, the whole point is having a reliable package that you can depend on. And that's where the K kind of rises above anything. The 2.5 swap, you know, turbocharging the 2-liter LS, they're just so reliable. So you know when you're going to the racetrack, odds are you're gonna have a pretty reliable weekend and a carefree weekend.
As for the cost of those 2.5-liter swaps, they are very affordable. You can get a shop like Goodwin Racing who will do the swap for you, including the engine, for $3,000 US.
That's good, wow.
It's a really good value. It's a very simple swap.
That includes the engine?
Includes the engine.
Wow.
They are using like wrecking yard motors for that.
Yeah.
You can buy a brand new 2.5 from Mazda for around $3,500. Though you can find them on sale sometimes for a bit less than that. But so the engines are cheap. The swap is cheap to do. If you want to do it yourself, you could knock that probably $1,000 off that. So you could do a 2.5 swap for $2,000, maybe even a little less if you really cut a lot of corners and reuse a lot of parts. But to do it really cleanly, I would say, you know, budget $3,000 minimum to do it. And then of course, that gets you to that, say, 170 wheel horsepower level. So if you want to get up to 220 like we have here, you're into cams and compression and, you know, 3-inch exhausts and high quality headers, and suddenly your price snowballs into
ECU tuning, right?
ECU tuning. You need good ECU control.
all of that.
Suddenly you're into the $6,000 to $10,000 range, and you're dealing with a built motor, which by nature is going to be less reliable than an unopened K24. So yes, it's still cheaper than going K, but once you try to get to K power levels, I don't think it's that much cheaper. And if it's unreliable, as Luke McGrew found, I think it's actually in the long run going to be way cheaper to run a K in this car. It seems like we're in love with this chassis and engine combination. I think it's because we are. Yeah. But that's not to say there are other ways to build an affordable track car, right? There are other great options out there.
There are, and you know, we were talking about that. I think like the C5 Corvette right now is a bargain, and it's already got an engine in it. So, you know, if we had to do it all over again, given the amount of money we spent, you could certainly get a C5, put another 20 grand into it, and be very, very fast as well, right?
Just ask our buddy Jacob Bodenauer about how he bought a cheap C5 and turned it into a GLTC car, and how much money he's got sunk into that though. So it ain't cheap building track cars, period, guys. And a Corvette can snowball on you just like a Miata could. And anything else pop into your mind?
Well, see, for me, I think the BMW E92 or E90 M3 platform is V8.
It's incredible.
It's incredibly, like, those cars are between $20,000 to $30,000 right now.
Yeah.
You know,
too cheap,
you could really just like gut them. You have the option of a DCT, and you could make them, you know, again, for $40,000, you could have yourself a really fun track car. The factor is the BMW curse. And I've experienced that, and so many other people have, and it's one of those things where, you know, everything will be good, but once a motor goes, it is an expensive thing to fix. Not that, you know, LSs aren't expensive, but BMW engines are really expensive, and there's not a lot of great support for people rebuilding those motors. So it's when I'd say yes, M3 is the way to go.
Do you feel lucky? Are you going to roll the dice?
You're going to be rolling the dice.
Yeah. Now we'll throw one more idea in there, and that is K-Swap and FRS.
Yeah.
So that is another chassis that I love, but has a bit of a dog of an engine. And turns out our buddies at K-Power Industries do make a swap kit for the FRS. In fact, they told us recently it's their best-selling kit now. So we're not the only ones to be thinking along those lines. And 2025 PT, Maybe it's K-Swap FRS time for us.
Maybe.
So there you have it, guys, the true cost of building our NC Miata. And truth be told, we're not done yet. We have more coming on this car, and it will bump that price up a little bit more. We're not going crazy on it, though, because this car is already very, very good. And for you cheapskates out there, yes, you could do this cheaper. But for you realists out there who want to know the true cost of building a K-swapped NC Miata like this to go to the racetrack in or just have fun with on the street, there you go. We've given you the numbers, so let us know in the comment section below. Have we convinced you that K is the way with this chassis, or are you still team V8, or still team 2.5, or still team turbo 2-liter? We want to know what you guys think, so please do comment below, and please do consider hitting that subscribe and hit that like button and do all those other algorithmic things so that more people can see our videos.